I stood in the pouring rain, watching my husband smile at the CEO as if he hadn't just destroyed my career. 10 minutes earlier, I had watched his mother scrape my company car against a concrete pillar in the parking lot. That vehicle was the only physical proof of my promotion. But to my husband, it was just a free shuttle service for his mother's shopping addiction. When my boss asked for an explanation, I expected my husband to defend me. Instead, he took a sip of his coffee, looked the CEO in the eye, and threw me to the wolves. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. I still remember the specific shade of gray the sky was that Monday morning. It wasn't just overcast, it was the kind of oppressive, charcoal-heavy slate that promises misery and delivers it in buckets. The rain was coming down in these aggressive, relentless sheets, turning the asphalt of the corporate parking lot into a black mirror that reflected my own exhaustion back at me. I sat in the back of the taxi, watching the meter tick up. $24, $24.50. It made my stomach churn. That was lunch money for 3 days. That was a utility bill payment. I gripped my purse strap until my fingers ached, doing the mental math I had been doing every single morning for the past 2 months. If I skipped getting coffee and brought a sandwich from home for the rest of the week, I could justify this expense. "Here is fine," I told the driver, my voice sounding small even to my own ears. I paid him, adding a tip I couldn't really afford because I was terrified of being perceived as cheap, and stepped out into the deluge. The water soaked through my coat immediately. I shivered, hunching my shoulders, clutching my laptop bag against my chest like a shield, and then I saw it. My stomach didn't just drop, it evaporated. Pulling into the lot, splashing through a puddle deep enough to drown a rat, was a silver Honda Accord. My silver Honda Accord, the one Harrison and Associates had assigned to me, the one that was supposed to be the symbol of my new life as a marketing manager. But I wasn't driving it. I froze, rain dripping off the end of my nose, paralyzed by a cocktail of confusion and dread. The car slowed down, easing into a parking spot near the front entrance, a spot reserved for visitors, not employees. The driver's side door opened and an umbrella popped out, followed by a head of perfectly coiffed, salon-fresh hair. Pamela, my mother-in-law. I watched, unable to move, as she stepped out, looking dry and pristine. She was wearing a coat that I knew cost more than my first car. She bustled around to the passenger side, and my heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Daniel stepped out. My husband. He was holding a travel mug, looking relaxed, like a man who had just enjoyed a chauffeured ride to work. He said something to his mother, laughing, and she patted his cheek affectionately before getting back into the driver's seat. She was keeping the car. She wasn't just dropping him off. She was taking the vehicle for the day. Again. I felt a surge of heat that had nothing to do with the temperature. It was shame. Pure, unadulterated shame mixed with a panic so sharp it tasted like metal. I was standing there, soaked to the bone, having paid nearly $30 to get to work, while my unemployed mother-in-law drove my company benefits package away to do God knows what. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run over there and bang on the window and demand she give me the keys, but I couldn't. I was frozen by the irrational fear that making a scene would be worse than the theft itself. Jessica. The voice came from behind me, cutting through the sound of the rain like a knife. I jumped, spinning around so fast I almost slipped on the wet pavement. Mr. Harrison was standing there, my boss, the CEO of the branch. He was standing next to his black Mercedes, holding a large black umbrella, staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Was it pity? Confusion? Annoyance? He looked from me, drenched, pathetic, standing next to a departing taxi, to the silver Honda that was currently reversing out of the visitor spot. "Good morning, Mr. Harrison," I squeaked. I cleared my throat, trying to sound like a competent professional and not a drowned rat. "Good morning. Why did you arrive in a taxi?" he asked. His voice was low, carrying easily over the storm. He pointed a gloved hand toward the Honda. Is there something wrong with the vehicle we assigned to you? Mechanical issues? My mind raced. I felt like a deer in headlights. If the deer was also hyperventilating, what could I say? If I said yes, he would ask for the maintenance logs. If I said no, I had to explain why Pamela had it. The employee handbook flashed through my mind, specifically page 42, section C. Company vehicles are for the sole use of the assigned employee for business purposes. Unauthorized drivers are strictly prohibited. Well, you see, I stammered, it's a logistical situation. I sounded like an idiot. I sounded guilty. I sounded exactly like someone who was misappropriating company assets, which technically I was. "Hey, Mr. Harrison, Jessica!" We both turned. Daniel was walking toward us, sheltering his head with his briefcase, flashing that easy, charming smile that usually got him out of everything. He didn't look worried. He didn't look like a man whose wife was currently undergoing a silent heart attack. He looked like he was greeting neighbors at a barbecue. "Morning, sir," Daniel said, stopping beside me. He didn't offer to share his shelter. He just nodded at the CEO. "Nasty weather we're having, right?" Mr. Harrison didn't smile back. He looked at Daniel, then at the retreating tail lights of the Honda, then back at me. "Daniel," Mr. Harrison said, his tone cooling by several degrees, "I was just asking your wife why she arrived in a cab while her assigned vehicle is being driven off the premises by a non-employee." I held my breath. This was it. This was the moment Daniel would realize the gravity of the situation. He worked in HR, for crying out loud. He knew the rules better than anyone. Surely he would come up with a brilliant emergency excuse. "Mom had a medical emergency. We had a flat tire and she's taking it to the shop." Daniel chuckled. He actually chuckled. "Oh, that," Daniel said, waving his hand dismissively. "That was just my mother. She needed to run a few errands today, and since Jessica sits at a desk most of the day, we figured it was silly for the car to just sit in the lot gathering dust. Efficiency, right?" I felt the blood drain from my face. I stared at him, my mouth slightly open. He hadn't just admitted it. He had framed it as if he were doing the company a favor. He had framed it as a logical, rational decision that any sane person would make. Mr. Harrison went completely still. The silence that stretched between the three of us was heavier than the storm clouds above. I watched his jaw tighten, a small muscle jumping near his ear. "Efficiency," Mr. Harrison repeated, the word tasting like ash in the air. "Exactly," Daniel said, oblivious. "We're a one-car household right now, essentially, and since we both work here, we share resources. It works out for everyone." "It works out for everyone?" I screamed internally. "I just paid $30 to get here. I am soaking wet. I have a client meeting in 3 hours that I now have to Uber to. How is this working out for me?" But I didn't say that. I stood there shivering, terrified that if I spoke, I would either start crying or vomiting. "I see," Mr. Harrison said finally. His eyes were cold, hard flints. "Come to my office, both of you, now." He turned and walked toward the building without waiting for an answer. The walk to the entrance felt like a funeral procession. The rain was still hammering down, but I was numb to it now. All I could feel was the sick, sinking sensation in my gut, the kind you get when you realize you've stepped off a cliff and gravity is just about to kick in. Daniel fell into step beside me. "What's his problem?" he muttered, keeping his voice low but not low enough. "He looks like he swallowed a lemon." I glanced at him, incredulous. "Daniel," I hissed, "you just told the CEO that your mother is using the company car for errands. The car that is assigned to Meow, for work." "So?" Daniel shrugged, pushing open the glass-heavy doors of the lobby. "It's a perk, Jess, like a laptop or a phone. People use their work phones for personal calls all the time. He's just being stiff." "It is a $25,000 liability, not a phone," I whispered furiously, wiping water from my eyes as we entered the dry, air-conditioned lobby. The receptionist, Brenda, looked up as we walked in. She smiled, then frowned when she saw my state. I saw her eyes dart to Daniel, dry and comfortable, and then back to me, dripping on the marble floor. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to dissolve into a puddle and flow into the storm drain. Every step toward the elevator felt like I was wearing lead boots. I thought about the promotion. I had worked at Harrison and Associates for 8 years. 8 years of staying late. 8 years of fixing other people's mistakes. 8 years of eating lunch at my desk. I had clawed my way up to marketing manager. That car wasn't just a vehicle. It was the trophy. It was the validation that I was worth something to this company. And in the span of 3 minutes, Daniel had turned it into a joke. We got into the elevator. Mr. Harrison was already inside, holding the door. He didn't look at us. He stared straight ahead at the steel doors as they slid shut. The silence in that small metal box was excruciating. I could hear my own breathing, ragged and shallow. I could smell the wet wool of my coat. I could hear Daniel sipping his coffee. Sloop. I winced. How could he be so calm? Was I the crazy one? Was I overreacting? Maybe Daniel was right. Maybe married couples did share company perks. Maybe I was just being uptight and paranoid, just like he always said I was. No, a voice in my head argued. No, look at Harrison's face. This is bad. This is really, really bad. The elevator pinged at the second floor. It sounded like a judge's gavel. Mr. Harrison's office was a glass-walled corner suite that overlooked the very parking lot where my career had just been run over. He walked in and gestured to the 2 chairs opposite his desk. "Sit," he said. Not a request, an order. I sat on the edge of the chair, careful not to lean back because my coat was still soaking wet and I didn't want to ruin the upholstery. Daniel sat back comfortably, crossing one leg over the other, placing his travel mug on the corner of Mr. Harrison's mahogany desk without asking. Mr. Harrison stared at the mug for a second, his nostrils flaring slightly, before walking around to his chair. He didn't sit immediately. He stood there, hands clasped behind his back, looking at us. "I want to be very clear about what I just saw," Mr. Harrison began, his voice dangerously even. "Jessica, you are the assigned custodian of a Honda Accord, license plate KLM 592, correct?" "Yes, sir," I whispered. My hands were trembling in my lap. I clenched them together to stop it. "And Daniel," he turned his gaze to my husband, "you are an HR generalist, which means you are intimately familiar with our corporate compliance policies, correct?" "Of course," Daniel said smoothly. He had this HR voice he used, calm, slightly condescending, designed to de-escalate conflict by pretending it didn't exist. "I know the handbook back to front." "Then explain to me," Mr. Harrison said, leaning forward, placing his palms on the desk, "why a non-employee is operating a company asset while the assigned employee is taking taxis to work." I braced myself. I prayed Daniel would just apologize. Just say he made a mistake. Say he misunderstood. "Sir, with all due respect, I think we're getting bogged down in semantics," Daniel said. I closed my eyes. Semantics. He just told the CEO he was arguing semantics. "My mother, Pamela, has been living with us for the past year," Daniel continued, his tone taking on a righteous, almost charitable quality. "She's an elderly woman on a fixed income. She has doctor's appointments, social engagements, things she needs to get to. Jessica works here from 8 to 5. The car sits in the lot for 9 hours. It seemed cruel, honestly, to force my mother to navigate the confusing public transit system when we have a perfectly good vehicle available." He paused, waiting for approval, as if he had just explained a brilliant cost-saving initiative. "We view the car as a family resource," Daniel added. "Since Jessica and I are married, what's hers is mine. We're a team. We share." I sat there, my mind screaming. We share? We didn't share. He took. I gave. I paid for the gas. I paid for the car washes. I paid for the parking permit. Pamela drove it to the mall. That wasn't sharing. That was parasitism wrapped in a wedding ring. But I couldn't say that. Not here. Not in front of the boss, because if I contradicted my husband in front of the CEO, I would look chaotic, unstable, a woman who couldn't manage her own house, let alone a marketing department. Mr. Harrison looked at me. Jessica, is this your view as well, that the company car is a family resource? The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. I looked at Daniel. He was watching me. His eyes slightly widened, a silent warning broadcasting loud and clear. Don't you dare make me look bad. Don't you dare be difficult. I looked at Mr. Harrison. He was waiting for the truth. My voice cracked. I cleared my throat. I want to help families, sir. Daniel felt that since the car wasn't being used during the day, I trailed off. I couldn't finish the lie. I physically couldn't do it. But I also couldn't tell the truth. My husband bullies me into giving his mother the keys, and I'm too much of a coward to stop him. It's not about what Daniel feels, Mr. Harrison interrupted, his voice sharp. It is about liability. If your mother-in-law hits a pedestrian, Jessica, the company is liable. If she is in an accident, our insurance may not cover it because she is an unauthorized driver. This isn't a family minivan. It is a tool I gave to you to do a job. We understand the liability concerns, Daniel interjected, unbothered. But my mother is an excellent driver. She was a school principal for 30 years. She's very responsible. That is irrelevant, Mr. Harrison snapped. He was losing his patience. The car is for work, period. Jessica, I expect that vehicle to be back in this lot by the end of the day, and from tomorrow onward, if I see anyone other than you behind the wheel, I will revoke the privilege entirely. Is that understood? Yes, sir, I said, my face burning. Absolutely, I will get the keys from Daniel today. Wait, hold on, Daniel said, his brow furrowing. Today? She has errands to run. She's meeting a friend for lunch in the suburbs. She can't just bring it back right now. I stared at him. Was he serious? Was he actually arguing with the CEO about his mother's lunch plans? Daniel, Mr. Harrison said, his voice dropping to a register that made the hair on my arm stand up. I don't care about your mother's lunch. I care about my asset. Get the car back, now. You are both dismissed. He turned back to his computer, dismissing us as if we were naughty school children. Daniel stood up, grabbing his mug. He looked angry now, not at Mr. Harrison, but at the situation, at the inconvenience. Unbelievable, he muttered under his breath as we walked out. Daniel, I whispered as soon as the door clicked shut behind us. How could you argue with him? He could have fired us. He's being a tyrant, Daniel scoffed, checking his watch. He's just flexing his power. It's pathetic. Look, I'll text Mom. She's going to be so upset. She was really looking forward to that lunch. I stopped walking. I stared at his back as he walked toward the HR department. He wasn't worried about my job. He wasn't worried about the insurance. He was worried that his mother might be slightly inconvenienced. The realization hit me harder than the rain. I wasn't his partner. I was the obstacle between his mother and her happiness. I didn't go to my desk. I couldn't. I felt raw, exposed, like my skin had been peeled back. I ducked into the third-floor women's restroom, the one near the archives that nobody used. I locked myself in the handicap stall and just leaned against the door, closing my eyes. My coat was heavy and wet. My shoes squelched. I felt disgusting. I pulled out my phone and checked my bank account. Balance, $342.12. I felt a sob rise in my throat. I had to pay the electric bill on Friday. That was $180. The taxi today was $25. If I had to take a taxi home, that was another $25. And then taxi tomorrow. I was going broke working a job that paid $80,000 a year because my husband refused to tell his mother to take a bus. Jess? The voice came from the main sink area. It was Nicole. She was the graphic designer in my department and the closest thing I had to a friend in this building. I hesitated, then unlocked the stall door. I probably looked like a wreck. My mascara had definitely run. Nicole took one look at me and put down her makeup bag. "Oh my God, you look like you just swam here. What happened?" I tried to speak, but my voice wavered. "Mr. Harrison caught me." "Caught you doing what?" "Swimming in the fountain?" "Caught me taking a taxi," I said, leaning against the sink, gripping the porcelain. "Because Pamela has my car. Again." Nicole's eyes widened. She knew about the situation. She knew about the borrowing. "Wait, I thought you said that was a one-time thing for her podiatrist appointment." "That's how it started," I said bitterly. "Then it was bingo. Then it was grocery shopping. Now it's lunch in the suburbs. Daniel told Harrison it was a family resource." "He said that to the CEO?" Nicole looked horrified. "He told Harrison that we share it, that it's efficient." I let out a harsh, wet laugh. "Nicole, I paid $25 to get here. Do you know how much money I've spent on Uber this month? Almost $200. I'm paying to come to work so she can drive a free car to spend money we don't have." "That is sick," Nicole said, shaking her head. "That is toxic, Jess. You know that, right?" "That's financial abuse." "It's not abuse," I said automatically, the defense mechanism kicking in. He loves his mom. She had a hard life. He feels responsible for her." "He's married to you," Nicole said firmly. "He's responsible for you. Does she pay for gas?" I shook my head. "Does she pay for the wear and tear?" "No." "Does she even say thank you?" I thought about the last time Pamela had taken the keys. She hadn't even looked at me. She had just held out her hand while watching TV and said, "Keys," like I was a valet. "No," I whispered. "Jess." Nicole stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You have to stop this. Today. Harrison isn't going to warn you twice. If she crashes that car—" "She's a good driver," I said, repeating Daniel's line. "She was a school principal." "She's 70, Nicole countered. "And she's driving a car she doesn't own on roads she doesn't know in a storm. If she crashes that car, you lose your job. Is Daniel going to pay your salary?" The question hung in the tiled room. Is Daniel going to pay your salary? I thought about the separate bank accounts. I thought about how he split the mortgage down to the penny, but forgot his wallet whenever we went to dinner. I thought about how he asked me to cover his mother's small expenses because his cash flow was tight. No, I realized, saying it out loud for the first time. No, he wouldn't. The vibration of my phone against the counter startled me. I looked down. Text from Daniel. "Mom is crying. She says she feels like a criminal. I hope you're happy. We need to talk about your attitude tonight." I stared at the screen, at the words, "your attitude." "Everything okay?" Nicole asked, watching my face. "Yeah," I lied, sliding the phone into my pocket. "Everything is fine. I just need to dry off." But as I stood under the hand dryer, trying to blast the water out of my cheap blazer, I knew nothing was fine. I was wet, broke, and being gaslit by my own husband. And the worst part? I was terrified to go home and face them. I sat at my desk, staring at a spreadsheet that hadn't made sense for the last 20 minutes. My wet clothes were starting to itch as they dried, a damp, heavy sensation that made me want to crawl out of my own skin. But it wasn't just the physical discomfort. It was the memory of how this had started. The rot in my marriage hadn't appeared this morning in the rain. It had seeped in slowly like water damage behind a painted wall, starting exactly 365 days ago. I closed my eyes and I was back in our living room. It was a Saturday. The sun was shining. I was happy then. The doorbell had rung at 10 in the morning. I remembered opening it to find Pamela standing there, flanked by 3 enormous hard-shell suitcases. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking past me, into the warmth of the hallway with tears already shimmering in her eyes. "They raised the rent, Jessica," she had sobbed, dropping a designer handbag onto my porch. "They raised it by $200. I have nowhere to go. I remembered the panic that had flared in my chest. Nowhere to go? She was 69, not destitute. She had a pension. She had savings, or so I thought. Daniel had appeared behind me, his hand instantly finding the small of my back, pushing me slightly aside to let her in. "Mom, what happened?" "I'm being evicted," she wailed, stepping onto my hardwood floors without wiping her shoes. "Effectively evicted. I can't afford it, Danny. I'm going to be on the street." I remembered looking at the suitcases. Who packs 3 giant suitcases for a conversation about rent? This was premeditated. This was a move. "You can stay here," Daniel had said immediately. He didn't look at me. He didn't ask me. He just said it. "We have the guest room. It's just sitting there." I wanted to say, "Wait." I wanted to say, "Let's look at your budget. Let's find you a smaller apartment." But the words died in my throat. I looked at Daniel's face, the concern, the desperate need to be the hero, and I looked at Pamela, who was now weeping into a silk handkerchief. "Just for a few weeks," Daniel had assured me later that night as we lay in bed. "Just until she finds a cheaper place. You wouldn't want my mother sleeping in a shelter, would you, Jess?" A shelter? The leap in logic was dizzying, but that was Daniel's superpower. He took a situation. Mom needs to budget better, and turned it into a moral ultimatum. "You want my mother to die in a gutter." "Of course not," I had whispered, feeling the trap snap shut. "Of course she can stay." If I had known that a few weeks meant forever, and that staying meant slowly cannibalizing my life, I would have packed my own bags right then and there. The first crack in the narrative appeared 2 weeks later. I was at the kitchen table paying bills. Our grocery bill had doubled. The water bill was up 30% because Pamela took 40-minute showers. I was stressing over the numbers, trying to figure out if we could afford to put extra toward the principal on the mortgage. The front door opened, and Pamela breezed in. She was humming. She carried 4 large shopping bags from a department store known for its high-end cosmetics and designer apparel. I froze, my pen hovering over the checkbook. "Oh, hello, Jessica," she said, dropping the bags on the counter next to the unpaid electric bill. "You're home early." "Yes," I said, staring at the glossy logos on the bags. "Did you go shopping?" It was a stupid question. Obviously, she had gone shopping. "Just picked up a few essentials," she said breezily, pulling out a bottle of perfume that I knew cost at least $120. "And a new dress for church. A woman has to keep up appearances, you know." My brain short-circuited. Essentials? Perfume was an essential? She couldn't pay her rent. She was living in my guest room for free, eating my food, using my electricity, because she claimed to be on the brink of poverty. And here she was, dropping $300 on a Tuesday afternoon. I felt a flash of anger, hot and sharp. "Pamela," I said, my voice tight. I thought, well, Daniel said things were tight for you right now. If you have money for shopping, maybe you could contribute to the groceries. The bill was $400 this week. The air in the kitchen changed instantly. The hum stopped. Pamela's face crumbled. It was like watching an expertly controlled demolition. Her lower lip wobbled. Her eyes filled with instant weaponized tears. "I didn't realize I was such a burden," she whispered, clutching the perfume bottle to her chest like a baby. I treat myself to one small thing to lift my spirits in this terrible time, and you ask me for grocery money, like I'm a tenant. "No, I didn't mean—" "I raised a son on my own," she cried, her voice rising so the neighbors could hear. "I sacrificed everything, and now when I'm old and vulnerable, I'm being nickeled and dimed for lettuce." I panicked. I backed down. I apologized. I felt like a monster. "She's depressed," I told myself. "She's losing her independence. Don't be cheap, Jessica. It's just groceries." I swallowed the anger. I paid the bills. And that night, when Daniel came home, Pamela was sweetness and light, and the shopping bags were hidden away in her room. I never mentioned it to him. I was too afraid he would accuse me of bullying his poor mother. 2 months after she moved in, I got the promotion. I got the car, the silver Honda Accord. It was the first time in my life I had driven a brand new car. It smelled like success. It smelled like freedom. 3 days later, the first request came. I was in the hallway, putting on my heels, grabbing my laptop bag. I was running 5 minutes early, feeling good. Jessica? Pamela was standing in the doorway of the kitchen, wearing her bathrobe. She looked small, fragile. "Good morning, Pamela," I said, checking my reflection in the mirror. "I hate to ask," she began, twisting her hands together, "but I have this terrible pain in my foot. My podiatrist is all the way across town, and the bus, well, the last time I took it, a man yelled at me. It was terrifying." I stopped. "Oh, that's awful. Do you want me to call you an Uber?" "Oh, I couldn't ask you to spend money on me," she said quickly. "I know how much you worry about money." It was a subtle dig, referencing the grocery conversation, but she delivered it with such wide-eyed innocence I couldn't call her on it. "Then, what?" I asked. "Well," she gestured toward the driveway, "you have that lovely new car, and Daniel said you just park it at the office all day. It just sits there." My stomach tightened. "It's a company car, Pamela. It's for work." "But you're not using it while you're at work, are you?" she asked, tilting her head. "I would only be a few hours. I'd bring it back before you even need to leave. Please, Jessica, my foot hurts so much." I hesitated. I looked at the clock. I looked at her pain. "Just this once," I said. The fatal words. "And you have to be careful. It's not my car. It belongs to Harrison and Associates." "Oh, you're an angel." She clapped her hands, the foot pain miraculously forgotten as she snatched the keys from the bowl. "I'll be so careful. You won't even know I took it." She drove me to work that day. She dropped me off at the front door like I was a child being dropped at school. I watched her drive away in my car, feeling a strange mixture of pride that I could help and a gnawing anxiety that I had just done something very stupid. She didn't bring it back in a few hours. She brought it back at 5:30. I had to wait in the lobby for 30 minutes. She claimed traffic. I let it slide. Because I wanted to be the cool daughter-in-law. I wanted to be easy. I wanted peace. The anxiety in my stomach hardened into a rock as I recalled the day it all went wrong. It was a Tuesday, 3 weeks ago. The day of the Creative Dynamics pitch. This was the biggest client I had ever led. A $50,000 contract was on the line. I had prepped for weeks. I had the presentation memorized down to the syllable. The meeting was at 10 o'clock sharp at their headquarters in the city center, a 20-minute drive from our office. I had told Pamela the night before, "I need the car. Do not ask. I have a meeting." She had nodded. "Of course, dear. I'll take the bus." But that morning at 8:30 when I went to the garage, the car was gone. I stood there staring at the empty concrete slab, my brain refusing to process the visual information. I called her, straight to voicemail. I called Daniel. "Oh yeah," Daniel had said, sounding bored. "Mom called me, her friend in the suburbs. I think it was Ethel. She had a fall. Mom rushed over to help her. It was an emergency, Jess." "I have the Creative Dynamics pitch in an hour," I had screamed, dropping my portfolio on the garage floor. "I need the car." "Calm down," Daniel said. "Just take an Uber. It's not a big deal. She's helping a dying friend, Jessica. Have some perspective." I took an Uber, but it was rush hour, and it was raining. The driver got lost. I arrived at Creative Dynamics at 10:20. I remembered running into the conference room, my hair frizzy from the humidity, clutching my wet bag. 5 people in expensive suits were sitting around the table, waiting. They looked at their watches. They looked at me. "So nice of you to join us," the VP of Marketing said. He didn't smile. I gave the presentation of my life, but I could feel the energy in the room. It was dead, I had disrespected their time. I was unprofessional. I was the woman who couldn't manage her logistics. We didn't get the contract. Mr. Harrison never said it was because I was late. He said they went in a different direction. But I knew. And when I got home that night, furious, shaking with rage, Pamela was sitting on the couch watching a game show. "How was Ethel?" I had demanded. "Who?" she asked, looking up, confused. Then her eyes darted to the side. "Oh, Ethel. Yes, she's fine. False alarm." She hadn't gone to help a dying friend. She had gone to lunch. I knew it. I felt it in my bones. But I had no proof, and Daniel had already decided I was being hysterical. A sharp buzz in my pocket snapped me back to the present. I was still in the office bathroom, but the automatic lights had flickered off, plunging me into semi-darkness. I waved my arm frantically to turn them back on. I pulled out my phone. 3 new messages from Daniel. 10:14 a.m. Daniel, I can't believe you let him talk to me like that. I'm an HR professional. You made me look incompetent. 10:16 a.m. Daniel, Mom just called me. She's crying in the parking lot of the mall. She says she's afraid to come home because you're going to yell at her. Good job, Jessica. You're bullying an old woman. 10:20 a.m. Daniel, we are going to have a serious conversation about boundaries tonight. You can't just prioritize your boss over your family. It's sick. I stared at the words, feeling the world tilt on its axis. I'm bullying her? I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red. My blouse was wrinkled. I had just been reprimanded by the CEO. I was risking my livelihood to support their lifestyle, and somehow, in Daniel's twisted kaleidoscope of a mind, I was the aggressor. I typed a reply. She has my company car. Mr. Harrison ordered it back. I am doing what I was told. I deleted it. It sounded defensive. I typed, she needs to bring the keys back, now. I deleted that too. It sounded angry. I typed nothing. I shoved the phone back into my pocket. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely zip my purse. Boundaries, I whispered to the empty room. He wants to talk about boundaries. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. But underneath the anger there was fear, a deep primal fear that maybe he was right. Maybe I was cold. Maybe I was prioritizing work too much. Was I a bad wife? A bad daughter-in-law? No. The logical part of my brain screamed. No, you are being used. But the emotional part, the part that had been slowly eroded by a year of you're overreacting and you're so sensitive, wasn't so sure. I needed to get back to my desk. I needed to work. I needed to pretend that my life wasn't imploding. The rest of the day was a blur of spreadsheets I couldn't focus on and emails I reread 5 times. Every time footsteps passed my cubicle, I flinched, expecting Mr. Harrison to come back with a termination notice. At 4:55, I stood up. My legs felt like jelly. I had to go to HR. I had to get the keys. The HR department was on the first floor, tucked away behind frosted glass doors. It was quiet down there. The carpet was thicker. The lighting was softer. It was Daniel's kingdom. I walked to his cubicle. He was typing furiously, his headset on, ignoring the world. He knew I was there. I could tell by the way his shoulders stiffened slightly, the way he focused a little too hard on his screen. I stood there for a full minute, waiting, being made to wait. Finally, he ripped the headset off and spun his chair around. He didn't smile. His eyes were cold, flat, devoid of any warmth. "What?" he said. "The keys," I said. My voice was steady, which surprised me. "I need the car keys. Mr. Harrison said I have to drive it home." Daniel stared at me for a long moment, as if deciding whether to make this difficult. Then he sighed, a long, exaggerated exhale that signaled just how exhausting I was to deal with. He opened his desk drawer. He fished around, the metallic jingle of keys cutting through the silence. He pulled out the Honda fob. He didn't hand them to me. He dropped them on the corner of his desk as far away from me as possible without them falling off. Mom dropped it off an hour ago, he said, turning back to his screen. She took an Uber home. Cost us $40. I hope you're happy. I didn't tell her to take an Uber, I stammered. She could have waited. She didn't want to see you, Daniel said, his fingers already flying across the keyboard. Can you blame her? I reached for the keys. My fingers brushed the cool plastic. Oh, and by the way, Daniel added, his voice dropping to a casual throwaway mutter. She said there's a scratch. Some idiot in the parking lot probably dinged her. Nothing major, but you know how you get, so don't freak out. He didn't look up. My hand froze around the keys. A scratch? I asked. What kind of scratch? I don't know, Jessica. A scratch. It's a car. Things happen. He waved a hand dismissively. Just go. I have actual work to do. I stood there staring at the back of his head. Don't freak out. The phrase was a trigger. It was his code for, we broke something of yours, and we've already decided it's not a big deal, so if you react, you're the problem. I grabbed the keys and walked away. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. A scratch. Please, God, let it be a small scratch. Let it be something I can buff out. Let it be nothing. But as I walked toward the exit, toward the rain-slicked parking lot, I had a sick feeling in my stomach that scratch was the understatement of the century. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a damp, suffocating mist that clung to everything. I walked through the parking lot, hitting the panic button on my key fob. The lights of my Honda flashed 2 rows over, way in the back, huddled against a retaining wall like a wounded animal. Just a scratch, Daniel had said. Don't freak out. I repeated the mantra in my head, trying to slow my heart rate. It's just cosmetic. It's a bumper scuff, a little paint transfer. Nothing Mr. Harrison needs to know about immediately. I rounded the back of a large SUV, and there it was. My breath hitched in my throat, a physical snag of air that wouldn't go down. It wasn't a scratch, it was a mutilation. A jagged, angry white line started at the rear passenger door and screamed all the way to the wheel well, where the metal was crumpled inward like a crushed soda can. The paint wasn't just scraped, it was stripped down to the bare, ugly steel, and the rear bumper, oh God, the rear bumper. It wasn't just dented, it was hanging loose on the right side, disconnected from the frame, secured only by whatever plastic clips hadn't snapped in the impact. I stood there, my hand covering my mouth, feeling the bile rise. This wasn't a ding. This wasn't a grocery store pull. You don't tear a bumper off at 3 miles per hour backing out of a space. This was velocity. This was impact. I walked closer, my legs trembling. I reached out to touch the raw metal edge of the gouge. It was sharp. It was real. $25,000. That number flashed in my mind in neon red. The company deductible was $1,000. Who was going to pay that? Me. It had to be me. Daniel would claim poverty. Pamela would cry about her fixed income. It would come out of my paycheck. My promotion raise, gone. Vaporized. I took out my phone. My fingers were shaking so bad I dropped it twice before I could open the camera app. I started taking photos, close-ups of the gouge, wide shots of the bumper, angles showing the license plate. I needed proof. Not for the insurance company, though they would need it too, but for them. Because I knew, with a sickening certainty, that by the time I got home, the story would have changed. They would say I did it, or that it was already there, or that I was hallucinating. I unlocked the car and opened the driver's side door. The smell hit me instantly. It wasn't the new car smell I had cherished 3 months ago. It was a stale, cloying mixture of violet perfume, Pamela's signature scent, and something else, something greasy, fast food. I looked at the floor mat. Mud, thick, caked mud that had dried into the carpet fibers. Where the hell is there mud like this? I thought. The grocery store parking lot is paved. The suburbs are paved. I sat in the driver's seat. It was pushed all the way forward, jamming my knees into the dashboard. I adjusted it back, feeling a surge of violation. This was my space, my sanctuary, and she had fouled it. I opened the center console, empty. I opened the glove box. Usually I kept it organized, registration, insurance, a tire gauge. Now it was a mess. Napkins were shoved in there, straw wrappers, and right on top, crinkled into a ball, was a slip of thermal paper. I smoothed it out against my steering wheel. It was a parking receipt. Valet services. Time in, 11:15 a.m. Time out, 3:45 p.m. Fee, $20. I stared at the timestamp. 11:15. That was right after she dropped Daniel off. But the location... There was no address, just a logo at the top, a stylized geometric sun. Where have I seen that? It wasn't the grocery store. Grocery stores don't have valets. It wasn't the doctor's office. I shoved the receipt into my purse, deep into the zippered pocket where my tampons lived, the one place I knew Daniel would never look. My heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. She hadn't gone to lunch in the suburbs. Valet parking for 4 hours? On a Monday? I gripped the steering wheel. It felt sticky. I looked closer. There was a smear of something orange on the leather wrap. Buffalo sauce? I squeezed my eyes shut. I wanted to scream. I wanted to light the car on fire. But I couldn't. I had to drive this wreck home. I had to drive it home and face the people who did this. I turned the key. The engine started with a shudder I hadn't noticed before. Or maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I was hyper-aware of every vibration now. I pulled out of the parking spot slowly, terrified that the loose bumper would fall off completely. As I turned onto the main road, the steering wheel fought me. It pulled slightly to the left, just a fraction, a subtle, constant tug that told me the alignment was shot. She hit something hard, I thought. She hit something hard enough to bend the tie rod. The drive home usually took 20 minutes. Today it felt like a death march. Every red light was an opportunity to stare at the ceiling and beg the universe for a rewind button. I rehearsed the conversation in my head. Me, look at the car. Daniel, stop yelling. Me, it's destroyed. Daniel, you care more about a machine than my mother. I could hear his voice so clearly it made me nauseous. He would pivot. He would deflect. He would make it about my tone. Don't lose your temper, I told myself, gripping the sticky wheel until my knuckles turned white. If you lose your temper, you lose the argument. Stay calm. Stick to the facts. The car is damaged. The policy is violated. The keys are mine. But how could I stay calm? I was driving a piece of evidence that could get me fired. Every other car on the road seemed to be staring at the dented bumper. I felt exposed, humiliated. I turned onto our street. My stomach twisted into a hard, cold knot. I didn't want to go in there. I wanted to keep driving. I wanted to drive to Mexico. But I had $300 to my name and an alignment problem. I wasn't going anywhere. I pulled into the driveway. Daniel's sedan was already there, parked perfectly in the center, forcing me to maneuver the damaged Honda onto the grass slightly to fit. I sat in the car for a full minute after turning off the engine. I watched the front window. Through the blinds, I could see them. Pamela was sitting on the couch. Her head was thrown back. She was laughing. She was holding her phone to her ear, animated, joyful. Daniel was walking past her, holding a plate of food. He wasn't looking at the door, waiting for his wife. He was looking at the TV. They were comfortable. They were safe. They were unbothered. The contrast between their cozy domestic scene and the cold, sick dread in my gut made me want to vomit. They knew the car was smashed. They knew I was coming home to find it. And they were eating dinner, laughing. It was sociopathic. I grabbed my bag. I grabbed my purse with the receipt hidden inside. I took a deep breath, inhaling the damp night air, trying to find some reserve of strength. I unlocked the front door. The atmosphere changed the second I stepped across the threshold. It was like walking into a freezer. Pamela stopped laughing immediately. She said something hushed into the phone and hung up. She adjusted her cardigan, transforming instantly from happy woman to fragile victim. Daniel was in the kitchen. He looked up, his mouth full of pasta. He didn't smile. He didn't ask how my day was. He just chewed, staring at me with a dull, defiant challenge in his eyes. "You're late," he said. "I had to inspect the car," I said, my voice sounding flat and robotic. "Right," Daniel said. He turned back to the stove. "There's pasta if you want it. Sauce is in the jar." He hadn't made me a plate. He had made himself dinner. I looked at Pamela. She was studying her fingernails, refusing to meet my eyes. "Pamela," I said. She jumped, as if I had cracked a whip. She looked up, eyes wide and fearful. "Oh, hello, Jessica. You startled me." "We need to talk about the car," I said. I didn't take off my coat. I felt like I needed the armor. "Oh, for heaven's sake," Daniel groaned from the kitchen. The clatter of his fork against the plate was loud and aggressive. "Can we not do this the second you walk in the door? I've had a long day." "You've had a long day?" I whipped around to face him. "I just drove home in a car that pulls to the left because the frame is bent, Daniel. I have a bumper hanging off by a thread." "It is not bent," Pamela piped up. Her voice was tremulous, high-pitched. "You're exaggerating. You always exaggerate." I looked at her. "Exaggerating?" "Pamela, the paint is stripped to the metal. The wheel well is crushed. What did you hit?" "I told Daniel," she said, looking at him for support. "It was at the grocery store, the Fresh Mart on 4th Street. The spaces are ridiculous. They make them for compact cars now, and that Honda is... It's a boat. It's enormous." "It's a mid-sized sedan," I said. "It fits in any standard spot." "Well, not this one," she huffed, crossing her arms defensively. "I was backing out, and there was this concrete pillar. It was in my blind spot. It came out of nowhere." "A concrete pillar came out of nowhere?" I repeated. "It was poorly placed," she insisted. "I barely tapped it. I got out and looked, and there was just a little white mark. I rubbed it with my thumb. It was fine." "Pamela," I said, stepping closer, "I took photos. It is not a little white mark. It is $2,000 worth of damage. Minimum." "Don't yell at my mother," Daniel snapped. He walked into the living room, positioning himself between me and the couch, the protector. "She said it was an accident. Accidents happen. Remember when you dropped that wine glass last year? Did I scream at you for an hour?" "That was a $5 glass from IKEA," I shouted. I couldn't help it. The false equivalency made my brain bleed. "This is a corporate fleet vehicle. I have to report this to Mr. Harrison tomorrow morning." The room went silent. Pamela gasped. She brought her hand to her chest. "Report it? You're going to tell him?" "I have to," I said. "He's going to see it. He has eyes." "You can't," Daniel said. His voice was low, dangerous. "If you tell him, you'll get Mom in trouble. They could sue her." "I am the one in trouble, Daniel," I pleaded. "I am the one who violated the policy. I have to get ahead of this." "So that's it," Daniel said, shaking his head with a look of profound disappointment. "You're just thrilled, aren't you?" I stared at him. "Thrilled? I am shaking. I am terrified." "No, you're loving this," he said, stepping closer, looming over me. "You've been looking for a reason to get rid of Mom since the day she moved in. You hate that we're helping her. You hate sharing your precious success with family, and now you have the perfect excuse. You can run to your boss, play the victim, and throw my mother under the bus to save your own skin." "That is not fair," I whispered. Tears were pricking my eyes now. Angry, hot tears. "I have supported her for a year. I bought her that coat. I pay for the groceries." "Money, money, money," Pamela moaned from the couch. "That's all she cares about, Daniel. She counts every penny I eat. It's humiliating." "I never said—" "I can't stay here where I'm not wanted," Pamela announced. She stood up shakily. It was a performance. I knew it was a performance, but it was working. I'll pack my things. I'll go to a shelter. I'd rather sleep on a cot with strangers than be looked at with such hatred. She started walking toward the guest room, dragging her feet dramatically. "Mom, wait," Daniel said, turning his back to me completely. "Don't say that. You're not going anywhere." He turned his head to glare at me over his shoulder. "Fix this," he hissed. "You go in there and you apologize. You tell her she's staying, and you figure out a way to handle the car without dragging my mother into court. Or so help me God, Jessica, we are done." I stood there, alone in the middle of the living room. My coat was still on. My purse was heavy on my shoulder. Apologize? He wanted me to apologize for his mother crashing my car. I looked at the hallway where he was now whispering soothing words to her. "It's okay, Mom. She didn't mean it. She's just stressed." Something inside me broke. It wasn't a loud crack. It was a quiet, soft release, like a tether finally snapping. "No," I thought. "No, I don't think I will." I stood in the hallway listening to the murmur of voices coming from the guest room. "It's okay, Mom," Daniel was saying, his voice low and soothing, the same tone he used to use with me when I had a panic attack about work. "She's just stressed. She didn't mean it. You know how she gets when she's tired." "I just feel so unwelcome," Pamela sniffled. "I try so hard to be invisible, Daniel. I really do." I stared at the wall. Invisible. She was the most visible person in my life. She was everywhere. Her shopping bags on the counter, her hair in the drain, her debt on my credit card, her damage on my car. I realized then that I wasn't a wife to Daniel. I wasn't a partner. I was a resource. I was the battery they drained to keep their lights on, and right now I was malfunctioning, so they were waiting for me to recharge so they could plug back in. I walked into the bedroom. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I felt a strange, cold clarity, like the fever had finally broken. I pulled my overnight bag from the top shelf of the closet. What do I need? I asked myself. Laptop. Because without my job, I am nothing. Chargers. 2 suits. Underwear. The receipt. I checked my purse to make sure the crumpled valet receipt was still zipped in the secret pocket. It was. That piece of paper was more valuable to me than my wedding ring right now. I zipped the bag. It made a loud, rasping sound in the quiet room. I waited. I expected Daniel to come rushing in. "What are you doing? Where are you going?" But he didn't come. The murmuring in the guest room continued. He was too busy rubbing his mother's back to notice his wife was walking out the door. I walked through the living room. I passed the kitchen where his half-eaten pasta sat on the counter. I opened the front door. The night air was cold. I got into the damaged Honda. It groaned when I started it. I backed out, the steering wheel fighting me, the bumper rattling like a bag of bones. I drove away, and not once did the curtains move. They didn't even look. 30 minutes later, I was sitting on Nicole's velvet sofa, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like lavender instead of stale smoke and lies. Nicole lived in a small one-bedroom apartment downtown. It was cluttered with art supplies and books, but it felt like a fortress. She had opened the door, taken one look at my face, and immediately ordered Thai food without asking questions. "Eat," she said, handing me a container of pad Thai. "You look like you're going to pass out." I took a bite. It tasted like ash. My stomach was tied in so many knots I wasn't sure I could digest anything, but I forced it down. "I left," I said. The words felt foreign in my mouth. "Good," Nicole said. She was sitting on the floor, leaning against the coffee table, watching me with intense, dark eyes. "You should have left 6 months ago." "He didn't even try to stop me," I whispered. "He was in the other room with her. They were bonding over how mean I am." "That's what they do, Jess," Nicole said gently. They create a reality where they are the victims and you are the villain. It bonds them. It's us against the world. You're just the common enemy. I put the fork down. I feel guilty. Is that crazy? I feel guilty for leaving him with the mortgage and the bills and everything. He's a grown man, Jessica. He works in HR. He can figure out how to pay an electric bill. Nicole reached out and squeezed my knee. Now, tell me about the car. You said it was bad. It's destroyed, I said, feeling the panic rise again. The wheel well is crushed, and she lied about it. She said it was a grocery store pillar. And you don't believe her? No, I said. I reached for my purse. Because grocery stores don't have valets. I pulled out the crumpled thermal paper and smoothed it out on Nicole's coffee table. Look at this, I said, pointing to the timestamp. 11:15 a.m. She dropped Daniel off at 9. She didn't go to the suburbs for lunch. She went here. Nicole leaned in, squinting at the faded ink. Valet service, $20. No address. But look at the logo, I said, tracing the jagged shape at the top. It's like a sun or a starburst. Geometric. Nicole frowned. I've seen that. Where have I seen that? She pulled out her phone. Geometric sun logo business. Local. She scrolled. Tanning salon? No. Hotel? Maybe. There was mud, I added. Thick clay mud on the floor mats, and the car smells like smoke. Not just cigarettes, but stale recycled air smoke. Nicole stopped scrolling. She looked at me. Smoke, valet, no clocks, daytime on a Monday. She typed something new into her phone. She clicked on Images. She turned the screen toward me. Is this the logo? I stared at the screen. It was a website for the Golden Horizon Casino and Resort. The logo was identical, a sharp gold geometric sun. That's it, I breathed. It's 40 minutes south, Nicole said, reading the description. They have a massive construction project going on right now. They're building a new parking deck. The overflow lot is a dirt field. The mud, I said. And the timestamp matches, Nicole said, tapping the receipt. She dropped Daniel off, drove 40 minutes to the casino, valeted the car, gambled for 4 hours, and then drove back. She probably hit a construction barrier or a concrete pylon in the parking garage. I sat back, feeling the blood drain from my face. A casino, I whispered. She told us she was broke. She told us she couldn't afford rent, and she's spending her days at a casino? And using your company car to get there, Nicole added. Jessica, this isn't just a lie. This is a double life. Does Daniel know? I thought about his reaction. Accidents happen. Don't freak out. I don't know, I said. But if he does know, and he let her take my car anyway, then he's not just an enabler, Nicole finished for me. He's an accomplice. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on Nicole's couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to the traffic outside. Every time my phone buzzed with a text from Daniel, I flinched, but I didn't look at them. I couldn't. The next morning, Tuesday, I was at the office at 7:30. I wanted to be there before anyone else. I wanted to be there before Daniel. I walked to Mr. Harrison's office. The door was open. He was sitting there, reading a report, a cup of coffee steaming on his desk. I knocked on the doorframe. My knuckles were white. "Come in," he said, not looking up. "Mr. Harrison?" He looked up. His eyes widened slightly when he saw me. I was wearing the same suit as yesterday. Though I had tried to steam it in Nicole's bathroom, I probably looked like a ghost. "Jessica," he said. "You're early." "I need to report an incident with the company vehicle," I said. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I didn't try to soften it. "It happened yesterday, while it was not in my possession." Mr. Harrison took off his reading glasses. He set them down slowly. "Go on." I took out my phone. I swiped to the photos. I walked over and placed the phone on his desk. "My mother-in-law was driving," I said, my voice steady but hollow. "She claims she hit a pillar in a parking lot. The damage is extensive. He picked up the phone. He scrolled through the pictures. I watched his face. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed. A deep, weary disappointment that was somehow worse than yelling. "This is significant structural damage, Jessica," he said quietly. "The rear quarter panel, the alignment." "I know," I said. "I am fully prepared to accept the consequences. It was my responsibility to secure the keys. I failed to do that." He looked at me for a long moment. "Did she admit to what happened?" "She said it was a grocery store," I said. I hesitated. I had the receipt in my pocket. I could show him. I could prove she was at a casino. But something stopped me. Not loyalty to her. That was dead. But a shred of dignity. I didn't want to be the woman whose mother-in-law was gambling away her career. It was too pathetic. "But," Mr. Harrison prompted. "But I don't believe her," I said simply, "and it won't happen again. I have removed myself from the residence. I have the keys." He nodded slowly. He handed my phone back. "Fill out the incident report with risk management," he said. "We will file the claim. The deductible will likely come out of your next bonus, I'm afraid." "I understand," I said. "And Jessica," he added as I turned to leave, "get a rental. Today. But if I see that woman within 10 feet of it, you're fired. Do I make myself clear?" "Crystal clear, sir." By 10 o'clock, I had a rental car. It was a white Ford Focus. Basic. Cloth seats, crank windows, a significant step down from the Honda Accord, but to me, it looked like a chariot. It was clean. It smelled like industrial cleaner. And most importantly, I was the only person with a key. I sat in the driver's seat in the rental lot, gripping the wheel. I felt a strange sense of ownership. This wasn't just a car, it was a boundary on wheels. My phone buzzed. Text from Pamela. "Jessica, dear, I hope you've cooled off. I forgive you for your outburst last night. We're family. We snap sometimes. Anyway, I have a hair appointment at 2. Since your car is in the shop, did you get a rental? I hope it's not too small. My sciatica is flaring up." I stared at the screen. My mouth actually fell open. "I forgive you." She crashed my car, lied about it, drove me out of my own home, and now she was forgiving me. And in the same breath, demanding a ride? The audacity was breathtaking. It was almost impressive. Then a text from Daniel. Text from Daniel. "Mom says she texted you. Just say yes, Jessica. She's been crying all morning. She needs a pick-me-up. Don't be petty. Bring the rental by at lunch." I looked at the dashboard of the Ford Focus. I looked at the rental agreement on the passenger seat. Authorized driver, Jessica Miller. Additional drivers, none. If I let her drive this, and she hits something, which she would because she was apparently driving by Braille, I wouldn't just be fired. I would be personally liable for tens of thousands of dollars. The company insurance wouldn't touch it. I felt a wave of nausea. My hands started to shake. This was it, the moment of truth. I could say yes. I could smooth it over. I could go back to the house, apologize, drive her to the salon, and pretend everything was fine. It would be so easy, the path of least resistance. But then I looked at the valet receipt still sticking out of my purse, the Golden Horizon Casino. She wasn't a sweet old lady with sciatica. She was a liar who viewed me as an ATM. I typed the response to Pamela first. My thumbs felt heavy, like I was pushing through wet cement. Me, I cannot drive you. Mr. Harrison has explicitly stated that the rental vehicle is for my professional use only. No other passengers are allowed during work hours, and no other drivers are permitted under any circumstances. You will need to make other arrangements. I read it over. It was cold. It was corporate. It was perfect. I hit send. Then I copied the text and sent it to Daniel. I put the phone on the passenger seat and waited. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Buzz. Incoming call. Daniel. I stared at the screen. The picture I had set for him, a photo of us on our honeymoon smiling on a beach, lit up the dark interior of the car. We looked so happy then. Or maybe I just looked naive. I watched the phone ring. I didn't reach for it. Buzz. Incoming call. Daniel. He called again immediately. He wasn't calling to chat. He was calling to scream. He was calling to bully me into submission, to use his HR voice to explain why my boundaries were actually abusive behavior. I reached out, my hand trembling, and pressed the volume button on the side of the phone. Silence. The screen kept flashing, but the ringing stopped. I took a deep breath. It was a jagged, shaky breath, but it filled my lungs. "No," I said out loud to the empty car. "No." It was the first time I had said no to him in 3 years, and even though I was sitting alone in a budget rental car in a parking lot, terrified of what would happen next, I felt a tiny spark of power ignite in my chest. Wednesday dragged by in a gray haze. I was operating on 3 hours of sleep and enough caffeine to kill a horse. I stayed at Nicole's, but I had to go back to the house during my lunch break. I had left my birth certificate and my passport in the fireproof box in the master bedroom closet. If things went nuclear, and they were definitely going nuclear, I needed my papers. I parked the rental car down the street. I didn't want to park in the driveway. That felt too intimate, too permanent. I walked up the path, my keys heavy in my hand. I expected the locks to be changed. Daniel was petty enough to do it, but the key turned smoothly. I stepped inside. The house smelled of lavender air freshener, overly sweet, trying to mask the underlying scent of tension. Pamela was in the living room. She was folding laundry. My laundry. She picked up one of my blouses, shook it out aggressively, and folded it with sharp, violent movements. She didn't look up when I walked in. She knew I was there, the floorboards creaked, but she was performing a master class in aggressive silence. "I'm just here for some documents," I said. My voice sounded too loud in the quiet house. Nothing. She picked up a pair of my socks and balled them together like she was strangling a small animal. "Pamela," I said, "I know you can hear me." She finally looked up. Her eyes were cold, hard marbles. There were no tears today, no poor old woman act, just pure, unadulterated malice. "You have broken his heart," she hissed. It was a whisper, but it carried across the room like a gunshot. "He hasn't eaten in 2 days. He is sick with worry because of your selfishness." "He's sick because he got caught," I said, walking past her toward the bedroom. "He loves you," she shouted at my back. "He defends you. Even when I tell him how cruel you are, he defends you. And this is how you repay him? By abandoning your family over a car?" I stopped at the bedroom door. I turned around. "It wasn't a grocery store, Pamela," I said. She froze. The sock in her hand went slack. "I found the valet receipt," I lied. Well, half lied. I hadn't found it on her, but I had it. From the Golden Horizon. Monday, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Her face went pale, then blotchy red. She opened her mouth to speak, to spin some new web, but I didn't wait. I walked into the bedroom and closed the door. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely work the combination on the safe. Left to 20, right to 10, left to 5. Click. I grabbed the papers. I grabbed my grandmother's jewelry box. I grabbed the spare cash I had hidden in a hollowed-out book. When I walked back out, the living room was empty. The laundry was abandoned in a pile on the floor. She had retreated. I had fired a warning shot, and for the first time in a year, she had actually ducked. Thursday morning, the axe fell. I was at my desk trying to focus on a marketing brief for a new line of blenders when my desk phone rang. The internal display read, "Executive Office." My stomach dropped through the floor. This was it. The claim had been processed. The deductible was too high. Or worse, Daniel had filed a complaint against me. "Jennifer Miller speaking," I answered, my voice tight. "Jennifer." Mr. Harrison's voice was unreadable. "Please come to my office immediately and bring your badge." Bring your badge. That was code for "you are being escorted out." I hung up the phone. I looked around my cubicle. The photos of my friends. The little succulent Nicole had given me. I didn't pack anything. If they were firing me, I wanted to walk out with my head high, not carrying a cardboard box of shame. I walked to the executive suite. The hallway felt miles long. I could hear the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. I knocked. "Come in." I entered. Mr. Harrison was behind his desk, but he wasn't alone. Sitting in the chair opposite him was Gloria, the VP of Human Resources, Daniel's boss. She was a stern woman with steel gray hair and glasses that magnified her eyes. She had a thick file folder open on her lap. She wasn't smiling. "Sit down, Jennifer," Mr. Harrison said. I sat. I clasped my hands in my lap to stop them from trembling. "Am I being fired?" I asked. I couldn't help it. The question just burst out. Gloria looked at me, her expression softening just a fraction. "No, Jennifer, you are not being fired. In fact, this meeting is to ensure you are protected." Protected? I blinked. "We processed the insurance claim for the Honda," Mr. Harrison said. "As part of the standard investigation for damages over $5,000, we pulled the telematics data, the GPS logs." He tapped a stack of papers on his desk. "We found some inconsistencies," he said, "with the story your husband provided." Gloria opened the file folder. She pulled out a map with red lines zigzagging across it. "We reviewed the vehicle's movement for the last 60 days, Gloria said. "Jennifer, were you aware that on Tuesdays and Thursdays, when you were clocked in here at the office, the vehicle was regularly traveling to the Riverside Casino and Resort?" I stared at the map. "No," I whispered. I thought she was at the doctor." "There are 18 trips to the casino in 2 months," Gloria continued, her finger tracing a red line. "The vehicle would arrive around 10 a.m. and depart around 3 p.m. That aligns perfectly with the valet receipt you mentioned in your initial report, but it establishes a pattern. There are also trips to the Valley View Mall," Mr. Harrison added. "The nail spa on 4th, a bingo hall in the industrial district." He looked at me over his glasses. "Jennifer, the odometer shows 3,000 unauthorized miles. That is 3,000 miles of gas, wear, and tear, paid for by this company. And on Monday, the day of the accident, the GPS confirms the vehicle was at the casino. The impact sensors triggered at 2:45 p.m. in the casino parking structure. I felt sick. Vindicated, yes, but mostly sick." "She lied," I said. "She told me she was poor. She told me she was saving money." "It appears she was gambling," Gloria said dryly. "But that is a personal matter. The company matter is the fuel." She pulled out another sheet, a spreadsheet of numbers. "We cross-referenced the gas card usage," Gloria said. "Your assigned gas card was used to refuel the vehicle immediately after these trips, often at stations near your home." I started to defend myself. "I fill it up on Sundays." "Not you," Gloria said. She slid a grainy black and white photo across the desk. It was a surveillance shot from a gas station security camera. It wasn't Pamela pumping the gas. It was Daniel. I stared at the photo. Daniel, in his work shirt, standing by the silver Honda, pumping gas into it. He was looking at his phone, unbothered. "Daniel has access to the expense approval system," Gloria said, her voice turning icy. "He works in HR. He knows the compliance flags. He was manually overriding the mileage discrepancies on your fleet report for the last 2 months." The room spun. "He knew?" I choked out. "He knew she was driving it that much?" "He had to know," Mr. Harrison said. "He was approving the gas budget. He was hiding the mileage. He was facilitating the theft of company resources to subsidize his mother's lifestyle." I thought about the fights, the gaslighting. "You're so selfish, Jessica. It's just a grocery run. He knew. He knew she was driving thousands of miles. He knew she was at the casino, and he was covering for her, using his position at the company to do it. And when the car got smashed, he tried to bully me into silence to save himself. Not just her. This is immediate termination territory for him, Gloria said. We are drafting the paperwork now. He will be escorted from the building within the hour. Oh my God, I whispered. However, Mr. Harrison leaned forward, we have a problem. You are his wife. Technically, you benefited from this arrangement, or at least you failed to report it earlier. It puts us in a difficult position regarding your continued employment here. My heart stopped, but I reported it on Tuesday. I told you. You did, Mr. Harrison nodded, which is the only reason you aren't being walked out with him. But you can't stay in this office, Jennifer. The conflict of interest is too high. The gossip alone will be paralyzed. He paused. I need you gone from this branch. I felt tears prick my eyes. After everything, after the abuse, the lies, the theft, I was losing my job anyway. I understand, I said, standing up. My legs felt heavy. I'll pack my things. Sit down, Mr. Harrison barked. I sat back down, startled. I said I need you gone from this branch, he said. A small, tight smile appeared on his face. We are opening the new satellite office in Riverside next month. We need a director of marketing to launch the brand there. I blinked. Director? It's 45 minutes away, he said. It's a step up. 20% pay increase, a relocation stipend if you choose to move closer to the facility. He slid a packet across the desk. And a new car, he added, a Jeep Grand Cherokee, registered solely to you, with a new set of keys that I suggest you guard with your life. I looked at the packet. Riverside Branch, Director of Marketing. It wasn't a punishment. It was a life raft. It was a golden ticket out of the hell my life had become. Why? I asked. Why would you do this? Because you came to me, Mr. Harrison said seriously. You were terrified, but you told the truth. That is rare. Daniel tried to hide it. You tried to fix it. He stood up. You have 24 hours to decide. But if I were you, I'd take the relocation check and find a new apartment in Riverside. Today. I stood up. I clutched the folder to my chest. I don't need 24 hours, I said. I'll take it. I walked out of the executive suite feeling 10 feet tall. I didn't go back to my desk. I walked straight to the elevators. I needed to go to the house one last time. I drove the rental car to the house. It was 11 a.m. Daniel was still at work, probably being fired right this second. Pamela would be there. I pulled into the driveway. I didn't care about blocking anyone in. I walked into the house. Pamela was on the couch watching a soap opera. She looked up, annoyed. Back again? She sneered. Did you come to apologize? I came to tell you that Daniel is losing his job, I said calmly. Her jaw dropped. What? The company found the GPS logs, I said, enjoying the way the color drained from her face. They know about the casino, Pamela. They know about the 3,000 miles, and they know Daniel cooked the books to hide it. You told them, she gasped, standing up. I didn't have to, I said. The car told them. It's digital. You can't lie to a satellite. I took off my wedding ring. It was a modest diamond, one we had picked out together 5 years ago. It felt heavy with false promises. I walked over to the kitchen counter and placed it next to the fruit bowl. He's going to be home soon, I said. He's going to be very angry, and this time he won't be able to blame me. Where are you going? She screeched. You can't leave us like this. How will we pay the mortgage? How will I get to my appointments? I turned at the door. I looked at this woman, this selfish, destructive force that had bulldozed my life, and I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no pity, just a profound sense of release. There's a bus stop on the corner, I said. I hear it's very reliable. I walked out. I got into my rental car. I put the Riverside address into the GPS. As I backed out, I saw Daniel's car screeching into the driveway. He looked frantic. He saw me. He jumped out of his car, waving his arms, his face purple with rage. He was shouting something, probably demanding I come back, demanding I fix it. I didn't roll down the window. I didn't stop. I put the car in drive and accelerated past him, watching him shrink in my rearview mirror until he was just a tiny, angry speck, and then, finally, nothing at all. 3 months later. The view from my new balcony in Riverside is spectacular. I can see the river and on clear days, the mountains. It's a small apartment, much smaller than the house, but it's mine. I pay the rent, I buy the groceries, and when I buy a bottle of wine, nobody drinks it but me. The divorce is messy, as expected. Daniel is fighting for alimony. He claims that since I got him fired, his words, not reality, I owe him support. My lawyer, a shark named Brenda, whom I hired with my signing bonus, laughed so hard she choked on her coffee when she read his demand letter. She says with the evidence of fraud from the company, he'll be lucky if he doesn't end up with a criminal record, let alone spousal support. The company didn't press charges against him, mostly to avoid the bad PR, but he is blacklisted in the industry. Last I heard from a mutual friend, he's working at a car dealership in the next town over. The irony is delicious. As for Pamela, she had to move out of the house. They couldn't afford the mortgage without my salary. She's living in a 1-bedroom apartment with Daniel now. Apparently, it's not going well. The saintly mother act wears thin when you're sleeping on a pull-out couch in your son's living room, and he's broke because of your gambling addiction. I saw them once, about a week ago. I was driving my new Jeep, the Grand Cherokee, which drives like a dream, and I stopped at a red light. They were at the bus stop. Pamela was yelling at Daniel, gesturing wildly at a schedule on the pole. Daniel looked defeated, his shoulders slumped, holding 3 plastic grocery bags. I watched them for a moment. I thought about feeling bad. I searched for that old guilt, that old need to fix things for them. It wasn't there. The light turned green. I turned up the radio, pressed the gas, and didn't look back. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.